Hello all and welcome back on today, Tuesday, November 10th. Yesterday we finished talking about kingdom through species, and now we're going to talk about the 6 kingdoms in particular, because not only do you need to know kingdom through species, so King Philip came over for good spaghetti, but you also need to know the 6 types of kingdoms, as well as remember what our scientific name is, which if you don't remember, it's Homo sapiens. So, today we're going to focus on those 6 kingdoms. I hope you've enjoyed your science fact. I haven't done one in a while due to the circumstances, but I hope it made some of you smile. But today, let's start by turning to page 13. Looks like this, but not as colorful, in your note packet. And we're going to be going over the 6 kingdoms of life. There used to be actually a decade ago when I went to high school 5. They actually had put 2 together and we had Monera, but we don't have that anymore. So science is constantly changing and adding new knowledge and recategorizing based on the new evidence we're given. So these are now our current 6: Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Eubacteria, Archaeobacteria, and Protista. So go ahead, turn to page 14 if you're not there already. And we'll start with Animalia. So, Kingdom Animalia, as I said, should be on page 14, are any creatures that are eukaryotic, so they have a nucleus and organelles. They are multicellular. They are heterotrophic, so different feeders, so they must consume their own food. They include animals you cannot see as well, so like microscopic small animals, insects. So we're not just talking about like dogs, cats, bats, rats, snakes, turtles, frogs, salamanders, mice. We're also talking about spiders. We're talking about fish. We're talking about jellyfish, whales, grasshoppers, earthworms. They're all in Kingdom Animalia. There are over 9 million species in Kingdom Animalia as well that we know of. So any of the examples you can think of some of your favorite things in Animalia, but also remember this also includes the small things, or the things that are harder to see, like mites or termites. Our next kingdom is Plantae, or plants. So these are also eukaryotic. So they have a nucleus and organelles. They're also multicellular. But these guys are autotrophic. Now, some of you might be saying, well, Miss Bryant, what about Venus flytraps? What about pitcher pots? They catch food as well. Well, a majority of the plant's energy, they make themselves. The only reason a Venus flytrap or a pitcher pot needs to capture insects or small animals is because the soil they live in is really cruddy. As in, it's missing a lot of those essential nitrogen and phosphorus. Actually, most tropical rainforest soil has already been stripped of all of its main nutrients. That's why you see lots of roots kind of buckling out of the ground, is because the soil's really cruddy, and the only reason life does as well as it does there is because of all the rain and the temperatures. So these plants, while they can make the sugar they need for food, still miss some certain necessary elements like nitrogen and phosphorus, and they get those from the flies and small animals and small insects they trap. It's not a primary source of their food. It's just a supplement. It's like you could say you're an omnivore, but some of you still take vitamins too. So they are considered autotrophic because their energy source they make themselves. They use the sun to make their food. So 2 facts, and this is about the types of autotrophs you can encounter. Some go through photosynthesis to use the sun for food. Some use chemicals. So this is like stuff in the deep sea vents or in caves or places where there's no sunlight, as we were talking about yesterday, to make their own food. So they pull the chemicals from either the air, the ground, or the water around them, and they take those chemicals and they fuse them into sugar. So that is Kingdom Plantae. If you flip the page to page 15, we're going to go on to kingdom fungi. So kingdom fungi, also eukaryotic. This is a group that also has a nucleus and organelles. They're not only multicellular, but you can have some species that are unicellular as well. These are heterotrophic, so they cannot make their own food. Their main fact is they do get their own food from absorbing nutrients from the ground. They don't actually consume. And if you think about it, it'd be kind of terrifying to see like a mushroom eat something. I saw a movie like that once and they had teeth and it was rather scary. So I'm kind of glad of that. But they actually like soak their nutrients up through the ground or through whatever they're growing on. There's over 100,000 species of fungi. So this includes mushrooms, smuts, molds, puffballs, all of those things that you think of that would grow on dead or dying things. So mushrooms and molds are usually the ones you're most familiar with. The other two might be a little new for you. But that's kingdom fungi. Now we're going to move on to kingdom Protista. Protista is also eukaryotic. If you notice, so far all of them have been. So 4 out of 6 of these are eukaryotic. So this is the last one. So it has a nucleus, it has an organelle, it is considered complex. This is also both unicellular and multicellular, as in some species are only made up of one cell and some species have multiple cells. If you notice, depending on the species in Protista, you can have either autotrophic or heterotrophic beings. We call this the catch-all kingdom because these species aren't really related to one another, but they're too different from everything else, so they kind of get piled together. Even though some of them are more closely related to plants, some animals, we just group them together. It's the leftovers kingdom, which is kind of sad, but that's what we've got right now. So they are complex eukaryotic organisms, but they're different enough that they don't fit in anywhere else, so they just get all grouped together. So that's why you get both unicellular and multicellular, both autotroph and heterotroph, but they're all eukaryotic, so they're all complex. So this is everything from tiny microscopic freshwater organisms to giant kelp, which is pretty cool, because most people think giant kelp's a plant, but it's not. It's a protist. It doesn't count as a plant. It's similar, but technically not a plant. So that's kingdom Protista. And I'm going to point this out because every year people get this mixed up. Do not get Protista and prokaryote mixed up, because most people see the name Protista and automatically go to prokaryote, but it's in fact eukaryotic. So there are two opposites like this in these kingdoms. So Protista is eukaryotic. The next one is our other opposite that people mix up. So if you flip to page 16, we're going to go over our last two. Kingdom Eubacteria. So kingdom Eubacteria, and I said be careful about this because even though it starts with a U, it is prokaryotic. Eu meaning true. So true bacteria. So Eubacteria are unicellular, as you can guess, practically mostly bacterial based. They can be, depending on the species, heterotrophic or autotrophic. This is the stuff that makes you sick. It's also the biggest kingdom in terms of species. It has the most species in it. It is a huge kingdom. But this is also the stuff that makes you really sick. So botulism, strep, pneumonia, tetanus, all of these the bacteria that causes MRSA, TB, which is tuberculosis, C. diff, which is a nasty stomach infection. So all of these things that make you sick, not viruses, just the bacterial infections that make you sick. So they make you sick. They're the largest kingdoms, and they're prokaryotic, unicellular, and depending on the species, they can either make their own food or get their food elsewhere. But that is eubacteria, as in it makes you sick. Last but not least, definitely not least, is kingdom Archaeobacteria. Now, Archaea means ancient. So you can kind of guess how old these are. So because it's a bacteria kingdom, these are also prokaryotic. These are also unicellular. Depending on the species, also either heterotrophic or autotrophic. The big difference is these are the ancients. These are the first organisms on the planet. They are the old bacteria. These are the ones that have stuck around. And they love extreme environments because when the planet was created, it was an extreme environment. So they like really salty places, really sulfury places, really hot, really cold. They love extremes. So an example of them, we call these, if you want a good example, halophiles and thermophiles, for those who are looking for a better example than just things that live in salt environments, sulfur springs, and thermal vents. Halophiles are bacteria that love salt. Thermophiles are bacteria that love extreme temperatures. So these are bacterial groups that they're really, really old. You only find them in extreme places now. But we can trace their genetic information to all other life. Like they're connected to every living thing on the planet. And they are the most ancient pieces of DNA too. Like we can dig in our DNA and find parts where we match up with them that are really old. So they are the first, the ancients. Archaea means ancient. So the last thing I want to quickly talk about are domains, because we didn't really talk about them yesterday, but they're kind of an overarching category here. So a domain is a very newer, broad category. So it's, you know how species is very specific, and as we go up the chain from species to kingdom, we get more and more species in there, and vice versa. You can actually tell who you're related to based on how many categories you have in common. The more categories you have in common for domain to species or kingdom through species, the more related you are. That's one of the ways you can tell relations through classification and taxonomy. But domain is the big overarching categories, and we have 3 domains. Eubacteria, and actually we're on page 17, I believe, so you're not there yet. Yes, page 17. Now, your picture in your notes is very darkened in, and I apologize for that, but that's how it's written down there. So, we have 3 domains in life, and I've rewritten the names off to the side for you so you can see them because they're very darkened in. But we have Eubacteria, kingdom Eukaryota or Eukarya, and Archaea. Now these are the big overarching categories. Now Eukaryota is the domain that includes every eukaryote. So that's everything from kingdom Animalia, every organism from plantae, fungi, and protista. So if it's eukaryote, it's in Eukaryota. The reason Eubacteria and Archaeobacteria have their own domains is because there's a ton of species already in both. Eukaryota, while it has the most kingdoms and the largest animals by size, that domain still has nothing in comparison to Eubacteria. There are so many flippin' species in Eubacteria that it's just a huge kingdom by itself, so it gets its own domain. And Archaeobacteria is the same thing. So it needs a ton of space, so it gets its own domain as well. So we have 3 domains: Eubacteria, Archaea, and Eukaryota or Eukarya. And those are the big domains of life. So anything eukaryotic, anything that's a disease-causing bacteria, and anything that's ancient. And we split them up from there. So domain is the most broad category. It has everything. Eukaryota has everything from fungus to kelp to roses to toads. And then as you go down the list, it gets more and more specific until you get to species. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to sign off here and continue your work. Let me know if you have any questions.